Hey everyone, it's Allie, and do you hate leveling? Well, today I'm going to hopefully show you a way that you can level any class or any build or anything that you want to attempt to do in this game in about 6 to 8 hours, depending on how fast you are doing the campaign itself, in an unbelievably simple to follow and painless way that you can, well, replicate on whatever you want to do. The beauty of this is that you're going to be able to buy a set of this leveling gear, and then you could use this on any of your characters moving forward to level them very, very quickly. Now, I know that there's going to be other ways that you could possibly level that might be a little bit faster on certain builds and certain archetypes, but realistically, I personally think this is by far the best option given that, well, one set of gear is good for all of your characters that you want to level in the future. I know a lot of content creators and a lot of build guides either just give you vague instructions or just don't tell you how to flat out level at all. So if you're trying to play some sort of builds and you don't know how to get to the point where you can actually play that build, or if your build has a suboptimal way of playing it, for example, Spark Archmage, which just has a kind of miserable time leveling, this should hopefully just provide you a substantially stronger way of being able to get your character ready to go for whatever build you want to play. So today we're going to be discussing how to level with the Pillar of the Cage God. This unique is equipable at level 1. It just gives us scaling bonuses based off of whatever attribute we stack. In our case, we're going to be interested in stacking Strength to gain the 10% weapon damage per 5 Strength, which is an unbelievably strong multiplier to your damage, and it allows you to basically just scale all the way up until Act 6, and realistically you can even get to yellow maps with this setup if you wanted to, with you putting no effort into it at all. Because we're going to stack so much strength, we're also just going to have a naturally large health pool, meaning that you should feel pretty tanky while leveling, while having good screen clear, and having just, well, the time of your life. Now, before we go any further, I do need to mention that there's going to be accompanying path of building for all this as well. Not only is it going to show you the skills that you'd want to level with in each of the acts and show you exactly how to link them, but it'll also show you exactly all the items that we're going to be discussing in this video. And most importantly, it's going to have a passive tree for every single class that's not only going to, one, show you how to put together the build in the first 3 acts from each starting location. And then after that, there's also going to be a second tree that's going to show you how to put together the rest of the build through acts 4 and 6. The general goal for whatever class you're starting to play is really, really simple. We pretty much just want to beeline from wherever we're starting all the way down to picking up beef and brute strength. Because this build is simply going to be scaling off of you getting as much strength as possible, pretty much every single attribute node as we travel is just going to be strength. Now, depending on your class, depending on where you start, and depending on how many notables you pick up along the way, you are going to need different amounts of dexterity and intelligence to be able to equip all of your gear and your skills. That means you are most likely going to have to turn some of these into a little bit of int and into a little bit of dex, but I can't really tell you exactly how many you need to, as that is going to be based off of exactly where you're playing. But as you push the axe, you'll need probably some around 5 or 6 intelligence and dexterity points in total as your skills level up. Once we do make it all the way down here, all we're really doing from there is just picking up all the nodes around here that just give you a lot of additional power. In most cases, it's simply going to revolve around picking up Unbending, as gives us quite a lot of additional life given how much strength we have, as well as picking up this 2-handed node over here. And depending on exactly where your setup looks like, as some classes are closer to this area, such as Merc for example, we might pick up a few other nodes around here. From there, once we get to Acts 4 and beyond, pretty much everyone's goal is to simply come down here, pick up Polymathy and Jack of Trades, as well as Adrenaline Rush and the attack speed nodes over here. Now, Monk and Ranger can do something a little bit special, where they can also come over and get Escape Velocity, which is quite a lot of additional movement speed. But outside of that, realistically, most of your trees are going to look very similar to this, where you're just coming over to the left, coming down here, and then just simply pathing over here based off of exactly where you're starting on the tree. So next, let's talk about the gear they're going to want to run for this. Now, obviously, this whole strategy revolves around Pillar of the Cage God. What you can do to make this a lot stronger is to potentially go and find yourself a corrupted one that has either corrupted added lightning, fire, or cold damage onto it. There'll be a trade link for this and all the gear that we're going to be discussing in the description below. But the point is, if you can afford to get yourself a corrupted one, that's going to give you somewhere around 20 to 30% extra DPS. Ideally, you're going to want to make sure that it also has 2 sockets on it so you can equip 2 runes on top of it. And this will pretty much just make the whole leveling experience a complete choke. If you can't afford an added damage corrupted one, that's completely okay. As long as you get yourself just any random Pillar of the Cage God and you have 2 rune sockets on it, that's all you need. For the runes themselves, it doesn't necessarily matter which added damage you put into them, but storm runes are going to be slightly better than everything else as they just scale a little bit stronger. You can put added fire, added cold in here as well. Again, doesn't really matter, just put whatever you have on hand. For the rest of our gear, it's all realistically just going to be a bunch of uniques, as there's actually quite a lot of really, really strong uniques that we could use to level, given all we care about is simply just getting as much strength as possible. For our helmet slot, we're first going to be starting off by using a Greymake. This helmet just gives you a lot of attributes at level 5, but the downside is that it reduces the attributes that you gain per level, meaning at around level 20, level 30 is when you realistically want to take this off. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be replacing this with a Veil of the Night. Now, normally this helmet's complete trash. As well, it sets your resistances to 0. The upside of this is that it gives you plus 20 attributes, which we really like, and it multiplies your health by 50%. The funny thing is that we stack a lot of strength, and we have an abnormal amount of health while leveling, which funny enough makes it so this helmet makes us tankier than if we actually had any sort of resistances. This ends up beating things like Gold Rim and having resistance runes in every single one of your slots. And yeah, I never considered that this helmet would actually be good, but well, there you go. You can even go and find yourself a corrupted one that has a higher increased maximum life roll on it, as that'll make it even stronger. But outside of that, just simply look for a high attribute roll and, well, just completely ignore resistances all the way up until endgame. If you do plan to play this build up until mid 70s or maybe even upwards to 80, you really should drop this and find yourself an actual resistance helmet, as that will be better in the late game. But for leveling through acts 1 to 6, this literally just makes you tankier than actually getting resistances. For our chest plates, we're going to be starting off by using a Fox Shade, and you could either go find yourself a random +5 dexterity ring or amulet from the gambling vendor to put it on at level 1, or just simply wait until level 5 to where you can put on Greymake. And this chest plate just pretty much sets you to 60-70% evasion rating through all of Act 1, making it really easy to get through. Once you get to 26, you're going to want to replace it with a Pariah's Embrace. Not only does this have 50 spirit on it, allowing us to run Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder immediately, but it gives us all attributes, reduce our mana costs, and gives us quite a decent amount of additional regen, making it feel really comfy. And well, we don't care that it doesn't have res on it, given we're going to be using Veil of Night. For gloves, we're going to be using Painter Servant. These gloves convert all of your damage to exactly 1/3 of each elemental damage type, and because of this, we will have a hefty amount of cold and lightning damage on every attack we do, allowing us to run a Herald of Thunder, Herald of Ice combo, which should basically just clear the whole screen for you instantly. For boots, and I highly don't recommend to not run these boots because they're just so damn overpowered, we are going to be playing with Wicked Destruction. These give you a very large amount of added damage to your attacks, and these by themselves will account for about 1/3 of your total DPS. The shock round is also really nice, as it lasts 8 seconds, and you can simply just quickly run through a boss, and then they now take 20% more damage, which should make every boss just a little bit faster. They do require level 16 to put on, so until then, I would just recommend to grab yourself something like a Luminous Pace, which just gives you 10% movement speed from level 1. For the necklace, we are going to be running a Sure-Footed Sigil. This necklace is a really, really funny one. Not only does it kind of take care of the majority of the dex issues you might have in the early game, but the +1 meter to dodge roll distance that the necklace has actually ends up making dodge rolling faster than running. Your dodge roll animation is based off of your movement speed, so the more movement speed you have, the faster it is. And this additional +1 meter guaranteed on every dodge roll just makes it to where you holding down spacebar will make you run faster than if you simply just ran normally. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, as it is quite an annoying playstyle of having to hold down space the whole time, and honestly after a few hours of leveling like this, your thumb's gonna get really sore. But it's up to you if you want to or not, and if you don't, it's still just a really good amulet to use. For the anoint on it, ideally you want to put Viciousness. This is just a dirt cheap anoint that should cost you maybe 5 or 6 exalted or so. It just gives us a bunch of extra attack speed, making it a very solid and cheap anoint. For our belts, we're gonna be running a Magnord's Girdle all the way from level 1 to Act 6, because well, upwards of +50 strength all at once from a single belt slot is pretty good. Finally, the last thing we need to discuss, and this is very important, are going to be what your rings look like. For your rings, you're going to start by using 2 black hearts to level with, because these are just really good level 1 rings. What you're going to want to do, starting in maybe Act 2 or the beginning of Act 3, is you're going to want to go on the trade website and find yourself some new leveling rings to use. The single most important stat for us is going to be getting as much added damage as possible, because our pillar, while giving us a lot of percent, doesn't really have that much flat damage to multiply by that percent, which means we're leaving quite a lot of damage on the table. All we need to find in our rings is simply just as much added damage as possible. Now, you can also look for life or strength on the rings if you want to, and that might make them a little bit more pricey, and that is going to be completely up to you. What I've done is I've set up a trade link, which you'll find in the description below, which can just very easily do all the work in finding rings for you. All you have to do is simply just open this up, go over to the requirements, and set the max level to whatever your current level is. So let's say you're level 25 and you want new rings. Just simply type in a max level 25, put whatever maximum you're willing to spend on these rings, either turn on or off the strength and life rolls if you want to find slightly better rings, and then just hit search and just let it do its work. It's now going to find you rings. In this case, we found 624, and all we need to do is simply click the sum button to sort everything by the highest sum possible. As we can see, this is now going to show us rings with very high added damage on them, and all we really care about is just looking at the sum number. Obviously, you could look for any other stats on here, such as mana regen if you want to, but honestly, I wouldn't really bother with that, and I just simply just buy whatever is at the top. There's quite a lot of these rings. They shine really powerful, and realistically, you shouldn't have to do this more than maybe once. Personally, for me, in my last leveling run, I leveled to Act 6 with 2 black hearts before I finally decided to find new rings, which I think tripled my damage. But if you feel like this is too much effort to look for more rings, you don't have to if you don't really want to, but I'd at least recommend if you can, to do it at maybe around level 35 to level 40, and then those rings that you buy at 35 to 40 should be more than enough to carry you all the way until endgame. Let's go over the skills really quickly so you know exactly where you're working with. In Act 1, you're going to start off by leveling with a Glacial Cascade. This skill kind of is bad, but it's the only thing that we have to work with up until we get to Act 2 where we get Stormwave. The special thing that you need to know about Glacial Cascade is that it has a line, which doesn't do too much damage, and then an explosion at the end of the line, which does a really big hit. For most of Act 1 and Act 2, you don't need to care about this at all, but whenever you get to any of the bosses in the acts, you want to just position yourself a little bit further away from the enemy so that the big explosion is hitting the boss, which will pretty much double the damage that you do. We're going to link an Upheaval, a Martial Temple, and a Rage on this, as these are some of the best supports in the game, and they'll make your clear just that much better. And then once you get yourself a second skill gem, you're going to pick up yourself a Tempest spell, which we're going to ignore until Act 2. For the Tempest spell, we're going to link Concentrate Effect, Overabundance, and Close Combat onto it. And then finally, when you kill King of the Mist and get yourself a Spirit Gem, you're going to pick up yourself a Herald of Thunder, which you're going to put a Magnified Effect, a Glaciation, and a Lightning Mastery onto. In Act 2, once you get to level 22, you're now going to be able to unlock Stormwave. Stormwave is simply just going to be Glacial Cascade, but better, as it's not going to have any of the weird positioning effects of it. And you're going to ideally want to quality this as soon as you can, if you can, as the quality makes the Stormwave lines thicker, making your clear overall a lot faster. On this, we're going to simply keep running Upheaval, Martial Temple like before, but we're now going to replace the Rage with an Ice Bites, as this should give you more damage while clearing, making everything faster. You're then going to also get yourself a Tempest Flurry at the exact same time, and you're going to put Rage, Primal Armament, and Inspiration on it. From here is when we're finally going to start using Tempest Spell. What Tempest Spell is a combo skill which requires you to build up 4 combo before you can put it down. Normally, you'd only put down 1 bell, but because we're running Overabundance, we can now have 2 bells down, and these bells can then be hit to do a stupidly large amount of damage to anything around them. You're going to completely ignore a Tempest spell for anything that isn't bosses, as it is completely overkill and it's just a waste of your time. We're going to be using Tempest Flurry to generate the combo required for it. So what you're going to be doing from level 22 and beyond is you're going to be using Stormwave for all of your clearing, and then you're going to be using Tempest Flurry on bosses where you just hit them with the Tempest Flurry, put down a bell, and then do your best to hit the bell. And the auto-targeting is a little bit iffy, so sometimes your Tempest spell might try to lock onto the boss instead of the bell, and sometimes your bells might be positioned in weird spots, and it's a little bit jank, but as long as you put one down, the boss should basically die instantaneously, and you should have no issues. What you're going to want to do in Act 2, once you get to the Lost City and can open up the golden chest and get yourself a second Spirit Gem, is you're going to want to pick a Herald device, and you're going to link an Venerate, a Conduction, and a Cold Mastery to it. With this, you're now going to have a Herald of Thunder, which should freeze enemies. That's then going to trigger your Herald device, which should shock enemies. That's going to then trigger your Herald of Thunder, basically giving you chain explosions across the whole screen. From here, that's really all you need, and this is going to be everything you're going to level with all the way up until Act 6. With the only additions to mention here is that in Act 3, you're going to pick up yourself a Wind Dancer from the Spirit Gem you get for killing the witch, and you're going to link a Cannibalism, a Clarity, and a Vitality to it just to make your life a little bit easier. From there, you simply just hold W and kill everything in half a second, and you should really just have a wonderful time. There really isn't too much to this leveling setup, and it's really cheap to put together, and once you put together this setup once and level through it once, you'll pretty much be a master of it, and you can use this to level every character in the future with basically no issues. If you have any questions on any of this, feel free to leave a comment in the comments below. I'd be more than happy to help you as soon as I can. I also stream on Twitch every single day, so feel free to come by Twitch and ask me any of your questions there. Or if you simply want to come by and be a part of a community and hang out with all the other kitties, I'd be more than happy to see you there as well. With that said, kitties, I hope you enjoy leveling, and I hope you have fun, and I hope this makes everything a little bit easier for you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next video.